Welcome to Medical Intuitively Speaking. I'm Kim Louise, medical intuitive and holistic nutritionist. Join me on a journey to discuss all things medical intuition, metaphysics, nutrition, and energy healing. I'm so happy you're here. Let's get this started. Well, hello and welcome. Today's guest is Barbara Reed. She's an animal communicator and energy healer. Her lifelong connection with animals began in childhood, growing up surrounded by dogs and horses that taught her the many ways humans can relate to the animal world. Her deep affinity for horses led her to competitive showing in central Illinois, where she frequently won classes and learned the subtler forms of communication between species. After earning a degree and entering the corporate world, Barbara's career took her to Northern California, where two life-changing experiences awaited. There, she adopted her first cat, discovering new depths of intuitive communication, and she was introduced to metaphysics and energy work. Though she was naturally intuitive, she initially attributed her insights to just common sense, but after a psychic reading revealed her innate gifts, she sought formal training and began exploring animal communication and energy systems. One day, while performing hands-on healing on her cat and hearing a telepathic thank you, Barbara realized the communication was real and her path was then clear. She soon launched her professional practice as an animal communicator and emotional and behavioral energy healer. She later expanded her work to include energy healing for humans. Barbara's training includes reiki, shamanism, tapping, channeling, and her studies at the Academy of Intuition Medicine, where she served as a senior teaching assistant and is now a tutor. With more than 25 years of experience, through her company called Intuition for Animals, she helps clients understand the emotional and energetic dynamics behind their pet's behavior, and she provides compassionate guidance to families navigating end-of-life transitions for their beloved animals. As part of her practice, she does energy healings for humans, and I'd like to welcome to the show Barbara Reed. Hello, Barbara.
Hi, Kim. Thanks so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to our discussion here.
You are welcome. I would love for you to describe some of your earliest memories of sensing that you could communicate with animals.
Well, I think we had a family dog, probably when I was about 6 or 7. So it started with that to a degree. The dog was actually more of my brother's than mine, but it did open me up to the fact that there is another being in the house with its own distinct personality and its own way of being and its own way of communicating. When I started writing at 8, which I did so until about I was 22, that shifted it to a whole nother level. And I began to understand that there are ways of communicating other than what we do verbally back and forth, between humans. And yes, we do a lot of that already with our dogs and hand signals, but with horses, I open further because a lot of that communication when you're riding is done with the hands and the feet and the legs, with the balance in the saddle. You communicate your cues to a horse by pulling a little bit on one rein versus the other to get him to turn, by urging him forward with a tap to the shoulder or, a bit of a kick behind the saddle to get him moving. It's the positioning of the hands also. It's just not right, left. It can be up, down. It can be pulling in to help set the head. And in a performance horse, that's really important. The placement of the head and the neck, that's looking at their conformation, and just the placement of the hands with some of the gaits, the ways the horse moves. So that was really the deeper opening, that there are other ways beyond the verbal. And understanding at the same time that the personality, the emotions of any animal is part of their communication and how they communicate their wants and desires.
I got to. So describe, earlier in the introduction, I had mentioned that you met with a psychic. So describe that moment during that psychic reading when you first learned you were intuitive and what was going through your mind when you first heard that.
Well, I definitely have to laugh about it now because it was a very immediate, no, I'm not. And I went through that for a couple of years. I was interested in psychic, and intuitive reading. So I was getting my annual reading like a lot of people did. And she started saying this to me. And I would say, no, I'm not. I just had no clue what it really entailed from the intuitive's perspective. And so I had mentioned it to somebody else at work who was interested in intuition, but and we just talked about it in generalities, and I conveyed the conversation, and she turned around and said, "Yeah, you are. I've known it all along."
Uh,
And again, another shock. So I thought, well, okay, there must be some truth here.
that's
And
right.
so I really went back to that psychic, and I said, "Teach me." And that was the beginning of the training. And it was like Psychic 101 is,
Uh,
how do you perceive information? What are your expectations on I shouldn't use the word expectations. How do you perceive the information internally? And the letting go of the expectations of the information, coming in, grounding yourself, being in a quiet place, that kind of thing, and just being open and maybe doing an intuitive setup for how the information would look on a screen outside my space or whatever it was she was doing.
wow. Yeah.
So that's how I started the training, and I stayed with her for about a year and a half,
So about a year and
working
a
with her.
half it
Yeah.
took for you
Yeah, just
to.
it was intermittent training, but it was enough to give me a little bit more of a foundation of, oh, that's what this is. This is how it happens.
Oh, got to. Okay. Um, and then when you heard your cat, when you were doing that hands-on healing, when you heard your cat say thank you to you during that healing session, like describe how that felt and what
That
that
was my
did.
first cat, Teddy,
Ah, okay.
and she had just been diagnosed with lung cancer, which
Oh,
we didn't really understand. But understanding at that point, I had no idea about her background. She had just been dropped off at a vet's office, and nobody knew what her life had been like earlier. And
mm,
I was not tuning into animals at that level, at that time. And so she was lying on my chest, and I'd heard about Reiki and hands-on healing. And I thought, well, I knew it was done by intention, but that's all I knew. And so I thought, well, let's try it. So I lay my hands on her back over her lungs and just intended that healing energy flow into her. I have no idea what happened. I didn't know what I was doing. I had just hopes that, it would help. And as I was finishing up, I heard very distinctly and with a very distinct personality sense behind it, thank you. But I
oh,
heard it differently. I knew it wasn't my imagination because
mm,
I heard it differently. It wasn't like, when you're daydreaming or you're doing mind chat. To me, that fills more the whole skull, amplifies it. And the thoughts, the words that go through my mind might have been a little bit more diffused. This was very centered in the middle of my brain. It was very clear and crisp, and it displayed a personality.
oh, interesting. So would you describe it as telepathic?
Yes. It definitely was an animal communication. I knew it was an imagination. And so I didn't understand it, and I asked, a few people who are intuition, but into it, but they couldn't explain it either. It was later, only later after I'd been through the academy, that I understood that it really took place in the brain, kind of where we go when we meditate, where things are really quiet. It's a
Mm-hmm.
place where we go right, I'll tell students, it's right before we fall asleep,
Uh-huh.
and it's in the center of the brain. And that's where a lot of the intuitive information processes through and then, disperses throughout other energy systems where you can pick up an understanding of what is being communicated. So that was my first true um, animal communication. And
Yeah.
it's actually one of the very, I'm not clairaudient, which means hearing things that are distinctly out of another being. And
Uh-huh.
that's only one of two instances that I've had true clairaudient experiences. But it was enough to say that, yeah, this is really true.
That's really, really cool that you had that experience with your cat.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she was an incredible cat, and quite a bond. She was, for me, one of the cat that was never to die, one of those, that kind of bond. And it was just, we had a great life together.
What happened with her lungs after, like, was there a profound difference in her lung health?
With her, what happened with her, yes.
Yeah.
It's, um,
Do you
she had
know?
surgery. We removed a part of her lung
Yeah.
and she was doing well,
Uh-huh.
but it came back.
Oh, gotcha.
There
Oh,
was no other treatment, and I don't even know if there were many other treatments at that time for animals, because we're talking approximately 30 years ago or so.
mhm.
And, now they have chemo and radiation and different things like that.
Mhm.
But it came back. And I was actually at a workshop getting my first level Reiki when
Uh-huh.
I felt her death. I was
Oh,
sitting at lunch one day, with the other students, and I felt a jolt in my body and I actually bit my lip.
oh,
And I figured when I got home, she was dead. And,
oh,
I just understood it had, it was just that the connection, the energetic connection and bond between us had broken.
yeah. Oh gosh. Now, I know that you spent part of your career in the corporate world before stepping into the intuitive work. What was that transition like from moving from a structured environment to doing work in metaphysics and energy? Because it's so different.
That was actually very easy for me. Um, I had been doing the work in the evening with clients in the evenings and weekends already for about 20 years. So it was a very limited practice, but I had been continuing with it, continually through and also continuing my study with other programs. And so when it came time, I did retire a little bit earlier than I thought I would, but that was okay. I was ready to retire. I was tired of the corporate structure.
Yeah.
I was tired of, sometimes the expectations, which were not within reason, let's put it,
Uh-huh.
of the bosses and people like that. So when I left, I was just very delighted to get out from under. And I was thankful that, it was almost of an age and that I could have just at that point just afford to go ahead and retire and then step more into my passion, which is
Good.
what I wanted all along.
That's right.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that it was an easy transition then. So for people that are new to this kind of animal communication work, how would you explain what animal communication is?
Animal communication is nonverbal and it's far, far beyond body language. It's
Okay.
very much underneath what an animal might be presenting themselves as, in the moment. For example, um, with the body language really is just the animals expressing their mood, their emotion of the moment. Okay, not what's underlying it. So, as say if you meet somebody you know, and they're walking a dog for a friend, so they really don't know that much about the dog, and so
Mhm.
I don't know much about the dog, and I'm stopping and chatting to him, and the dog is quite happy and just wagging its tail. So I'm petting it while I'm talking to her, and he'll appear to be happy. Wants to get to know me, just be very friendly. But if you go underneath that language of the moment, you
Mhm.
might see some sadness because their person has been away for a week and the dog walker has been stepping in and the dog misses their person,
Oh, got you.
and there's a degree of sadness and maybe a little confusion about where are they, that kind of thing. So it's going in underneath the body language, the expression of the emotion at that moment, and seeing the history, which is, includes, the problems, the issues that the animal may have grown up with that are contributing to today's behavior.
When you when you do receive this info though, is it like for myself, when I receive information, it's just a download of info, claircognizance. Is it the same way for you, or is it all telepathic?
Well, look,
Or
I'm
is there
beginning to have the belief that everything starts as telepathic and then diffuses through our systems. Like if you're clairvoyant, and you see pictures, it may start as the telepathic communication, but then also the information ends up in your sixth chakra where you have the clairvoyant, capability, or if you're clairaudient, or let's say clair sentient, where you feel other people's or animals' emotions, it comes in telepathically, possibly, but ends up in the second chakra where you feel that and start to interpret that as to what's really going on. So I don't know for sure on that, but that's kind of my guess.
okay.
Because we all feel it differently in our bodies at different
Yeah.
times,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's, if you're working with a trauma, like to me, I work a lot with the chakras and the emotions, although, as you know, they deal also with the organs and things like that. But I'll start with the chakras before I go out to the other systems. And it's whatever presents itself first, whichever chakra, I'll start with that. But with trauma, it's going to encompass a lot of different chakras that part of expression, part of how to relate to other people, part of the sense of self, things like that. So I end up working up and down between the chakras, helping facilitate a healing, just as it just becomes an intuitive flow up and down. The intuition tells me where to go next. I may go back to the same chakra 2 or 3 times, but it goes in at different levels.
For animals, this is going to sound like a silly question, but do they also have seven main chakras?
Yeah, they have the exact same systems we have.
They do. Okay.
Okay. I don't do a lot of energy work on animals. I will some, and there's some systems I may not really go to with an animal just because of the depth of them. Um, but I would be open to working with pretty much any system. I just with when you do energy work, I just prefer to do it. I'd rather do tapping or something else to help them release the energy behind um, an issue, or the information. And you can get a sense, and I try to teach the owner how to do it so they can
Mm.
get a sense of a faster release because
Mhm.
the energy work I do with people can take time.
Right, right. Now, can you share a few client stories about the issues that they had for their animal companions and then how you were able to help them?
Sure. Um, I've had a client who moves a lot. And when I say move, they're big moves. So
Yeah.
every number of months, it could be 6, 8, it may be a year.
Mm.
But since I've known her, I think I first met her and she was in California. Then she was in Puerto Rico. Then she was in Canada. And the
Wow.
last time I talked to her, she was in New York. And she
Mm.
has a cat who goes with her every time. We know cats often don't handle these kinds of moves very well. This one does. But in her last move, and she'll check in before the move and after she gets there to see how the cat's doing. But in the last move, she called and said that her kitty was having a hard time. He was depressed and he wouldn't go under the house, which
He
was strange.
he would
And
go under the house or
he
he would.
wouldn't go under the house.
Oh,
He was an indoor outdoor.
oh,
And so I looked at the house, even the energy of the house from the people who had been there before. And it needed a little clearing, which she was able to do, just of the previous people's emotions and events. And then I looked at the land, and it was not very clear. There were difficulties there. The energy wasn't really what you would want it to be. And what I ended up coaching her through, and that would include under the house, what I
uh,
ended up coaching her to do was and it was easier to have her do it and somebody there than me do it from a distance, which I could have, but have somebody come in and clear the energy, make it so the cat was comfortable because the cats are highly intuitive and had still was picking up a feeling of the people who had been in the house.
oh, I see. So it was the previous people, not necessarily spirits hanging out.
Right,
Okay.
right.
So to clear an environment like that, is that like sage or other
Yeah,
type?
she had saged and things like that, sage or sweetgrass. And but it goes beyond that. You can actually do different energies that are more of a spiritual vein, and go through. If I'm going to clear a property, I'll go through the event of is just energetically of burning it. If it's a house, burning it, purifying the area, and then just rebuilding the concept of a house and putting in the emotions that you would like to have in your residence of love and humor and integrity and whatever it may be that they want to have. So that's basically what she had done. Um,
Did the
I have
cat,
another. Hmm?
before you continue the next story, did the cat then feel more
Yes,
comfortable going in?
yes.
Oh,
Within a month, the cat
wow.
was happy again, and just went under the house, moved around the property. It was just totally, happy with the house.
Wow. That's a great story. Okay, you were about to share another one.
Okay. I often get clients, and I have one now that's got an elderly dog that
Hmm.
has dementia as well as physical problems. And she gets very concerned about, I think the dog is about 13, and she gets concerned with the dog starts acting differently. So if the dog is acting different, because we know, he's moving pretty rapidly towards end of life. And so she'll call me. It's like, oh, he stopped eating today, and I'm really worried about him, or he's not really coming out from the bed. He's just sleeping more than normal.
Uh-huh.
And what's going on? Do I need to call the vet? And it's at that point, it's just a communication. If there's something really serious going on, of course I'd say call the vet. But it's getting a sense of where the dog is, which can be hard to do when any animal, any being has dementia.
Oh,
Um, things get a little fuzzy.
yeah.
And like with the lack of eating, it's just a sense, well, no, I think he's okay. Give him another day. If he's not eating in another day, then call the vet. And at that point, I heard from her the next day and she said, well, he's eating,
Oh,
so we keep going on and on. So she'll do check-ins on that just out of concern of where is the dog in this very slow transition. Um, with cats, I was remembering thinking about this and remembering a couple when I used to live in San Francisco. a couple would call me periodically, and they called one evening and saying, our cat isn't using the litter box. We don't know why. That had never been a problem. So again, it's checking in with the animal is what's happening here, what's changed the behavior. They had already done an investigation between them. Has anything changed in the house that upset the cat's routine? Nothing had. So what
Yeah.
was going on? And when I communicated with the cat, it was just getting a sense of darkness. And I didn't know what that meant. So I told him, I just sense darkness. And, the people sometimes have to provide the fuller answer for the clues I give them.
Uh-huh.
And what they said was, oh, well, the litter box is on the landing on the stairs on the way down to the garage, and the light isn't always on in there. And
Oh.
oh, by the way, we put a lid on the litter box too to compound it. They took the lid off the litter box and they'd started leaving the light on a little bit longer times. And the cat went back to using the litter box.
Oh, that's so funny. That makes
Yeah,
sense.
so information and solutions come in strange ways,
Yeah.
and there are other ways that there really is no solution. I thought of another instance when, again, I knew the people and I had looked at their dog before and they called me and the dog was fine. They had called me and the dog was presenting with anxiety, and just very nervous and they didn't know why. And again, I looked at the house. I didn't sense any changes there, but we talked about it because it could be subtle changes that you don't even think about. And it could even be things like a change in food or something like that. But we looked at the house and their behaviors. There was no changes. And then I looked at the outside and it was an external source.
Hmm.
And what was happening was I sensed greenery and trees, not far from the back of their property. I didn't know if it was parkland or what, just that sense. And so I asked them, I said, is this true? And they said, yes, there's, a green belt or a park back there. And I said, well, I'm getting a sense it was either of, I said, I don't know which, but it's either a pack of wild dogs or coyotes going through there.
Oh, interesting.
So it was a totally external factor of which they could do nothing about
Yeah.
other than to be aware. And I said to them, it was transient. And but the smell was there that the dog was picking up and making him anxious. And I said, check with your neighbors because if this is true, everybody needs to be careful about all of their animals,
Hmm.
cats and dogs.
Hmm.
And I heard about a week later that yes, they had checked with some neighbors, and yes, the neighbors had heard something or been aware of something back there too.
Oh. Did anyone lose any animals because of
I
it?
never heard, so I hope not. But
Yeah.
you just never know.
Yeah.
That's the one thing with about animal communication is you often don't hear back,
That's right.
unless, it's a client you work with, off and on, and then you
Right.
can inquire.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, do different species of animals have distinct ways that they prefer to communicate, different particular ways?
I don't sense it as different species. Now, granted, I don't work with wildlife,
Uh-huh.
but I would imagine it would be the same, but that there wouldn't be a difference. Um, I sense it as a difference in personalities.
Oh, okay. Hmm.
Okay. So, and it's in that way, it's very like humans. We all express ourselves differently depending on our personality and our upbringing and things like that. Well, animals are really no different. So, um, you can have an animal that's quiet and doesn't really want to share much information for whatever reason, or you can have one that's very open and chatty. You could have one that's just shy in general, and just it's harder for them to meet people. They're not overly gregarious, but then you have others that are very assertive, or you have others that are happy, versus an animal that is either sad or maybe fearful. So it's more of a personality trait.
So the cats, for instance, I've noticed like Siamese cats are not the most friendliest cats that I've experienced versus, let's say, I see videos all the time about orange cats having
Orange cats,
specific
orange tails.
personalities.
Yes, yes, yes.
Or like I think they're called Maine Coons,
Yeah, the Maine
right?
Coons.
Those seem to have specific kinds of personalities. And then examples of dogs,
Mhm,
huskies seem to have
mhm,
very boisterous personalities.
mhm,
And then seem pretty quiet versus like a golden retriever. That is the most happy-go-lucky
mhm.
dog breed that I've ever experienced. Do you find though that that's how their personalities show up, similar to their breed at all?
I think a lot of it is genetic.
Mm.
I won't say so much for, well, I've never really thought about it in terms of, say, a lab and the happy dog, because any dog can be happy, especially if they're with you have a deep bond and you're in a joyful situation. But labs are just very exuberant in how they express
Yeah.
it, you know.
Yeah.
Um, versus if you look at a Doberman, they may be, happy, but they may not be as exuberant about it. But they're also trained to be more of a guard dog
Yeah, that's
and
true.
more
Yeah.
watchful.
Yeah.
Animals can be just like people, um, participants in an activity, or they can stand back and observe more
Hmm.
and watch what's happening. And that might be part of it. And that could be part of the personality, regardless. It could be part of the genetics or just part of the personality or both.
Hmm.
And cats can be very much that way. Sometimes in a family, when I'm doing a reading on one animal, I always want pictures of all the animals in the house because
Yeah.
quite often I'll get information from the others.
Yeah.
And just understanding the interaction of everybody says something. And I'll say that this older cat who might be 12, it just is always in the, up on the perch or whatever, watching and observing, is the alpha.
Hmm.
And they'll say, no, it's this exuberant 2-year old that's running all over the place, and just, wanting to play and being pushy. And I said, no, he just thinks he is. It's this 12-year-old up here who
Uh-huh.
really is in charge, and the other cats will defer to him. So there's interesting dynamics that go on that way also.
Yeah. And so just to clarify with the listeners, the way you base this is by looking at photos of all of these animals,
Yeah.
mostly, right?
It's
Okay.
easier for me.
Yeah.
I could do it without a photo, but it's a lot easier for me to cut through is this the right animal I'm tuned into, and
Uh,
just having that visual, and the photo itself presents me. I mean, intuition is about energy. We are energy. We are comprised of energy at the base level. And so, the photo conveys that sense of energy.
yeah.
And especially, I don't care generally if a photo is 3 years old or it's recent, unless the animal is ill or close to dying. And I want to see something. It's just too important you want to be as precise as you can. So I want to see something as recent as you can get it.
Yeah. That's what I do with my clients too. I look at a
Yeah.
current headshot photo. Yeah. So does an animal's emotional or energetic imbalance mirror that of their human companion? And then if so, explain how that works.
It can. Um, Sometimes you'll have an animal who's just stubborn by nature, wants it their way, and is, by darn, they're going to do it their way. And you have a human that can be equally stubborn, wants it their way, and their expectation is that the dog do it that way. You don't even bother with a cat because that won't work. But with a dog, there might be a mirroring and a face off of equal stubbornness. And the dog just may not want to do it, may not understand, or just doesn't care. It just wants it its own way. And usually in those cases, it's convincing the human either to lower their expectation or just let go of it. It's just not worth it because you're going to create discord and frustration for everybody involved. So that can happen.
I
It
have
can also be a codependence, which
okay.
is
Yeah,
more
explain that.
difficult.
Explain that a little bit more.
Okay, it's when a person puts their love on their companion, most often a dog, because dogs give love freely back. So a person puts their love on the animal and it becomes really emotional, and the expectation is trying to find the love back. And it's often love that they may not have received when they were growing up.
You talking about the human? No,
No, I'm
this is
talking
the
about,
animal
well, the
knows.
beginning of the human story,
Oh,
but how it can then apply over to an animal.
mhm.
So with a dog, if you grow up and you were in a family where you didn't receive nurturing, or your parents were controlling and didn't let you really become who you were growing to be as you grew through your teens, and you didn't get the nurturing, you didn't get the guidance, the people were just kind of walled off from you, your parents, emotionally, and you want to feel love and you want to give love. And so you adopt a dog,
Hmm.
and then you find that you've bonded with them, and then all of a sudden the dog loves you back. I mean, they love unconditionally.
Hmm.
And so you find you're taking the dog everywhere.
Hmm.
um, you're spoiling the dog beyond all bounds. And yes, I believe in spoiling, but you can go too far,
Hmm.
and where there becomes a dependence from both. The dog may miss the person. It can be difficult with the dog then if the person all of a sudden enters into a relationship and there's a little bit of competition there, or the person wants to go on a longer vacation and the dog is left behind. The dog has feelings, and may stop eating or may get mopey and depressed, things like that. That's it. And the person then feels guilty because they know that's going to happen. That's an entwining of the emotions, both directions.
What about the situations where the human has high anxiety for whatever reason?
Yeah.
Let's say they had a lot of trauma and they are just operating in high anxiety all the time. Do you find that the animals pick up on that and that causes them to have high anxiety as well?
Yes. They can cause them to have high anxiety. It can cause some organic issues because of the stress to the body and the immune system.
Hmm.
Um, it can, it's just, even though this isn't anxiety, but it still kind of expresses it a little bit. I went through about a year of vertigo due to work related stress. And I would wake up on Monday morning and have vertigo where I couldn't go to work for about an hour until it settled. And so I would get up and go in the living room, and somebody had said, sit straight up and just close your eyes, and the vertigo would settle. My cats would come in. I had three at the time. My cats would come in and pace around the chair where I was sitting. They wouldn't settle down. Whereas normally, if I would go sit anywhere, they could care less. But they were picking up on my not feeling well,
Yeah.
the stress of my not being able to go to work. So anxiety is a form of stress, anger, fear, that kind of thing. If you're in great anger, quite often the cat or the dog will run to the other end of the house.
Hmm.
It may not be directed at them, but they know you're angry. They feel the energy of it,
Hmm.
and they just don't want to be around it.
But then sometimes the animals become problematic too with their behavior, right? Have you
I'm sorry,
noticed
they become
that?
problematic.
With their own behavior because they're sort of picking up on that
Yeah,
energy in the environment, right?
yeah. At that
Yeah.
point, it's about getting a sense of the human. I don't It would be intrusive if I intuitively went in and asked for their whole story intuitively without permission.
Uh-huh.
But getting a sense of, yes, is this an anxious person in general, or do I have a sense of an upset there, within the household? And I will ask them, is there something going on in the household? Is there been, and I may, if they say yes, we may delve into it a little bit more. A guest who's making a lot of noise, or they've been having a lot of parties and the animal doesn't like all the people and the
Mhm.
loud music. We'll then start to delve into it together. Or yes, if I get a sense and they open up to saying, yeah, they've been anxious, I'll just say, do you want to talk about it? And then I can go in a little deeper. And from there, it's just helping them realize that, especially if there's that deep bond, that they need to kind of give permission to the animal just to live their own life. And I actually will say that at times you're deeply bonded, and the animal thinks, animals like to have jobs, especially dogs, but like to have jobs in the household too. And it's just like, tell the animal that you're okay. Tell your cat you're okay. This is your problem. And just, do a separation of that energy from the heart, that you're taking care of yourself. And if nothing else, it helps them understand how they're contributing to the anxiety. And so hopefully then they'll relate to the animal differently, and giving the animal more assurance that everything is okay.
Right. Okay. And then are there any simple practices that the listeners can start today to strengthen their intuitive connection with their pets?
Um, well, first of all, I would say as a general, some of the things I'll say that people may be already doing, but, consider other things I suggest. It's make sure you're in a quiet place with no distractions,
Hmm.
no extraneous noises, or having your pet out of the room can be, get them out of the room because they're a distraction and they bring an energy in. Um, Let go of expectations, which means not being analytical.
Hmm.
Be settled and centered in your body where you're just really quiet, and just then working with becoming aware more and more of how you sense that information coming in. And then ultimately, it becomes also recognizing how your animal may express things that's
Hmm.
different than as a human expresses things.
So it's best to not be in the same room, you're saying, with them when trying to get that connection because of the distractions.
They
Because
can be a distraction. I
yeah.
actually prefer not to be with an animal when I'm reading them, because I just as soon sit there and pet them and scratch their ears.
Uh,
And so it's, yes, I can create the separation,
uh-huh.
but it's just that one extra little intention that I have to set, that there is a separation, and I remove my hands from the animal. But it's just easier. Any distraction that you can remove just makes it easier for
Hmm.
you to
Hmm.
focus on what you're there to do. And you're there to hear the animal's story, and then help possibly come up with some solutions.
Okay. And then are there any, no, I'm going to actually change that. What do you think is the most important thing humans can do to better understand and honor their pets?
Well, it's first understanding that they're individuals,
Uh-huh. Okay.
just as we are.
Okay.
Okay. And remembering that they're not humans, so don't expect, they're not mirrors of us, so we, interact with them differently than we would with humans. Um, so you don't have the same expectations, but they're different than us. They have different wants and needs. They have different fears. They respond to them different. They have the same emotions, but like us, I may be afraid of one thing, but my cat may have a fear of something else. So it's treating them for their own individual personality traits.
Yeah, I see.
Okay. And so
Mm,
treating them as individuals and understanding also that I think, as I've said, there are times when it's the human that's going to have to adjust, not the animal,
uh-huh.
because they just either aren't going to go there or they're incapable of going there. I mean, I had somebody once, this was years ago, and I think the cat had diabetes and she was supposed to be giving him insulin with little injections.
Yeah.
And she wanted me to tell the cat that she had to do this, and to make it easier to do. The cat didn't understand, no matter my saying that, this is for your life and for your
Okay.
well-being and for you to feel good. The cat didn't understand. So you just continue to work with it in the best way possible, the situation.
Is there a way a person can communicate that sort of thing to a cat so that they can understand why they're getting a shot like that?
I really didn't, I don't know because I didn't work for me.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
but it was, I have communicated back in other instances where, I found out later that the animal got it and shifted a behavior.
Yeah.
But no matter what, the animal has to want to, like us, we have to want to be willing to shift a behavior before it'll
Yeah.
happen. And if they
Yeah.
don't understand it, then you really can't want to shift it.
I am assuming every time that the cat eats, probably three. How many times would a cat eat a day? One, two times?
I feed my cat twice a day.
Twice a day. So that
Yeah.
would mean two shots a day.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. You said feed a cat?
No, I'm talking about insulin
Oh,
shots
insulin, I
for a
don't
cat.
know.
Oh,
It may depend on how far along with the disease they are.
yeah. Yeah, I would
It's
imagine
just
that that
really
would be
under the
scary for a
skin, so it's not really a painful deal like into the muscle. But it's still, some cats, they just don't want to be bothered, and it's a
yeah, it's
nuisance,
true. Yeah.
and it feels strange.
That's right. That's right. Um, so you work also with families navigating their pets' end of life journeys, and how do animals communicate that readiness to transition?
When I sense an animal is coming to the end, to me, I feel it as a bone deep tiredness.
Oh, I see.
Okay. Which goes well beyond an emotional tiredness or a physical body tiredness. The energy is just barely there carrying them along.
Uh,
And animals generally, I've found, they are aware of the life death cycle. And I've never really found an animal to be afraid of dying.
that's interesting.
Yeah, it's more
Uh,
of they may not want to die because they're enjoying their life.
uh-huh.
That would be easy to understand. They've had a good life, and they're enjoying being with their people. And
Hmm.
they may be sad about it, but I've never sensed an angst associated with it. Um, so it's clarifying that with their human, that yes, they are aware. Sometimes they're aware, could be a year in advance, that they realize that they are slowing down. They've noticed the changes in their body. And no, it's not anytime soon, but it is moving that direction. And so I just convey what the animal is, sending me, as far as their sense about it and what they want. If, leaving out the issue if the animal is in pain, which is a whole other story. Um, I may not bring up euthanasia unless the person brings it up. It just depends on my sense of where the human is in this process.
Uh-huh.
And at that point, then I'll just make an intuitive query of, are you okay with getting some help in this process?
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll get back, no, I want to wait and do it myself, kind of
Mhm.
thing. But if I check back later, it's quite often then, no, this is, and I would just describe it as I'm just getting more and more tired, and this just is not happening. And yes, I'm okay with this. This is just, to me, just reflecting a great deal of trust that is between the animal and their human at that point.
Yeah.
And trusting that decisions will be made. And yes, everybody's going to miss one another because there's going to be a big vacuum in the household there, but it would be okay. And then, I talk to the human about, things they might bring up to be aware of with the vet. I'll also be, as part of the decision making, though, suggest that they bring the vet into it because the
Mm.
vet does have information. They know the animal, they know if it's a disease, what the progression is likely to look like,
Yeah.
which I may not know that, and they're going to be sympathetic to the needs of the family, which includes the animal. And then, of course, what is best for the animal, especially when you see the quality of life changing a lot. It becomes
Yeah.
very difficult when,
Mhm.
back to that codependence. I've had people
Right.
who
Right.
wanted to hold on to an animal and because they
Right.
could not let it go. And that's their journey. It's not up to me. If an animal is in pain, I would say that. And the vet would say that. And that moves it to another level. But if the animal isn't in pain, it's just not eating much and just not doing much at all. That's their journey. And all I can do is tell them what the animal
Hmm.
wants. Now, whether they can do
Hmm.
it or not is something they have to work out.
Hmm. So, what advice do you offer to humans struggling with that grief or guilt during that process? Like, do you guess you kind of just answered, really? It's their journey and their animal's journey.
I
So,
just I don't I don't discuss it with the clients in that terms.
okay.
I just accept it. I mean, it's their decision ultimately and their animals, and I'm there to convey the information. I might think it would be best and easiest for everybody. It would certainly make the end of life um, journey easier for the animal, but if there's not any pain involved,
Uh,
which, like I said, takes it to a whole other level. Um,
that's right.
that
Okay.
it's just, um, I just feel it steps outside of my boundary
I see.
to be a neutral conveyor of information, and I'm here to be objective and neutral.
I got you. So, kind of switching it up a little bit. So you teach at, or I'm sorry, you had taught at the Academy of Intuition Medicine as a senior assistant and are now a tutor. Um, what do you enjoy most about helping others develop their intuitive abilities?
Basically, the whole thing. It's just a lot of fun.
Uh-huh.
It really is fulfilling to me. I become a teacher. I mean, I answer questions, yes, at whatever they're learning that week, but it's mostly about helping them go in and deepen their own senses of intuition, through learning whatever module is being taught and whatever energy system is being taught. So I become a guide and a coach. There are times if a person is comfortable doing a self-healing, I will go in intuitively following them, as they do it. And we're talking about the system
Hmm.
and, what energy they sense is, coming in to do the clearing. And I might say, great job. You did a great job there. Now let's look over here. Did you take a look at this? And that'll shift it over a little bit to things that they might have missed. I mean, we can't sense and see everything that's going on, so it just becomes a second set of hands in their eyes, so to speak. So it becomes more of a coach and a guide at that point. And then there are lots of times with students who aren't very attuned yet to doing their own self-healing. It's still difficult for them. I work with them on self-trust,
Oh, okay.
and, through, this validation process. I may do it with, doing a healing directly on them, for them, to help get some of the issues out of the way so they can learn from what I'm doing and what
Mhm.
I'm sensing. They can tune in and just watch me and listen to me. And it's also accepting that with anybody, when their healing is involved, I don't do the healing per se. I'm the facilitator.
Mhm.
Okay. It's I'm offering my perspective, my perceptions, intuitive perceptions, and of what they're allowing me to see. I'm not going to see what they don't want to, what they don't want to show me. And then allowing whatever energy that needs to come in by intention come in to help affect a release of that constriction or that block, that issue, so their energy will flow smoother
Mhm.
and better in a system. So I learn from everybody. It's myself. It's just fun. And I meet some
Yeah.
great people.
I mean, obviously, I mean, look at your face.
Yeah.
You get a thrill out of it. I think that's great. So how do you guide students who are skeptical or unsure? I know you were talking about learning to trust.
Yeah, it's hard. And it's the one thing I'll guide them where I can when we're working together. And I might even talk about, as a color, what is self-trust to you? What does trust energy feel like to you? And
Interesting.
have them intuit that,
Uh-huh.
and bring that in. And something that they can do continually off and on until that does really begin to build up. And, or, I might ask them, or hear about, some of the healings they've done in class, because the class is experiential, it's meditation, and then it's you go and work, the students work on each other. So it's experiential.
Yeah.
And what did you learn during that, or what did you sense when you were working on somebody? And I'd go in and look and help them affirm. It's just finding ways for them to affirm the intuitive perspectives that they're receiving. And that really is done through a lot of practice.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just practice with me, practice with class,
Mhm.
and it's also pairing up with other classmates and working on each other during,
Mhm.
outside of class.
Mhm.
It just deepens their own abilities and certainly deepens their self-confidence.
Yeah. Yeah. That feedback from other people is so critical.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm. So, regarding the human clients that you work on with your business, share some stories if you can about how you've helped them with their health concerns.
Um, I, this approach is holistic, mind, body, spirit,
Hmm.
and understanding that some of the energy systems, you know, have a direct correlation to organs or different parts of the skeleton, and correlate to different emotions. So it's going into those energy systems and quite often starting with the chakras, as I said, and then taking me beyond to the other systems. But it's doing releases of the energy, the constriction, the blocks to the energy, which become, I guess you could call it, blocks to them really stepping into who they were meant to be. A lot of shamanic traditions might call it soul retrieval. When we go through a trauma, we lose a part of ourself, and it's healing and bringing energy back to that part. So we just keep, releasing the traumas and filling back up with our own energies of who we are. I work then with, a lot of students and clients who have been abused,
Okay.
as children, physical and emotional abuse,
Uh,
alcoholic parents.
mhm.
And it's about releasing the triggers that they energetically, emotionally, because as I said, emotions are energy, you know, have in their body in the different places, those memories of those times, and releasing them. Ultimately, it's as the person becomes more self-assured, more self-aware, quieter within their own presence, realizing that, you know, oh, you just reacted to a situation, this week that I would have reacted totally differently to a year ago. Okay. And oh, by the way, as part of that realization, the emotional trigger has been released. I recognize now that I can take my time thinking about how I want to respond. So we go from reactive to using discernment and responding or taking action. It gives us a chance to look at things different from a broader perspective, see different, more opportunities. Um, so that's overall the way I, approach it. As far as a physical health thing, I would have had a client who was brought up by um, a mother who was very controlling, very restrictive,
Mhm.
and was more concerned about her immediate community and how they perceived her and her family than
Mhm.
she was about how she was raising her daughter.
Uh-huh.
So she applied those restrictions on her daughter, even as her daughter was going into her teen years, not really allowing the daughter to do the exploration that teens do.
Right. In order to learn about themselves. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And the daughter ended up marrying somebody. It became the same thing.
Uh-huh.
She was acquiescing more to her desires versus, standing forth and being more of an equal partner. I would
Uh-huh.
call it, when I work with people like this, it's more in servitude to another,
Uh-huh.
feeling you have to do it versus wanting to do it from love.
Uh-huh.
And physically, what ended up happening, because she didn't have a sense of self,
Hmm.
which is third chakra, which is the colon, she got colon cancer.
Oh.
Now, I'm not saying that everybody who has a trauma is going to get cancer or get sick. No, they won't. But
Hmm.
that's how it played out with her.
Hmm.
And what it became about is somebody else was doing a direct healing on the organ. I was doing the indirect healing on the story
Hmm.
that was affiliated with the colon, the story of her, um, following the beliefs of her parents, not allowed to have her own beliefs and her own sense of self.
Yeah.
And yes, she did a blend of alternative and, Western medicine.
Uh-huh.
I believe she had it removed, but I think she kept back from chemo. I don't remember. But she is cancer free. And
Oh,
so
that's
for
such a good
me, at the
story.
very least, even if I could get skeptical about myself and analytical, well, did what I do help heal that or not? I don't know. But what I did do is help heal a pattern and a belief she
Uh-huh.
had. So no matter what, she's happier in her life now. And when she looks at meeting new people that she would like to partner again,
Hmm.
she knows more of what she wants. And what she wants will be more of an equal partnership.
That's right. Oh, that's a hard lesson
Yeah,
for her to go through. That's tough.
it is a hard one. And it's like I said, it's just they're all levels of abuse,
Hmm.
and it's I've even worked with, it's not a knowing abuse. I'm not saying that, but when you look at the world today, I've worked with a number of students and clients whose parents have been alive during World War II in
Uh-huh.
Europe,
Yeah,
or were, alive, born right at the end. So they kind of grew up during that long period of Reconstruction. And there was so much fear. And kids are very intuitive and they're very susceptible and they pick that up. They may not understand it. Just like with an alcoholic parent, they don't understand why their parent is acting as they are, but they don't know who's going to come through the door, which parent, and they pick it up and it can pass down through generations that way.
for sure. I mean, I don't know if you know Henry Winkler's story with his parents who
No.
survived the Holocaust, but I mean, he's not physically ill, but the emotional trauma that was passed down to Henry Winkler was
Hmm.
awful, what he went through,
Yeah.
because of that. And then I even have my former brother-in-law, his parents were also Holocaust survivors, and then that trauma. I don't believe it had a physical effect on my former
Hmm.
brother-in-law, but it can have a huge emotional
Yeah.
effect and your
And it's,
outlook on life.
yeah, it affects how you look at life
Hmm.
and thus how you live your own life.
Hmm. Yeah, that's right. Um, so explain all of your services that you offer.
I love the service. Okay, as an animal communicator, um, I look at the animal and, obviously when they call me, there's an issue going on. If everybody's happy, there's no reason to talk to me. Um, but as a communicator, I look at, I hear what the issue is and I, just make an energetic connection to the animal to see why this is going on, or sometimes to anticipate, like how the animal might react with a change into the house in the household. And a change could be they're expecting a baby, getting a new roommate, they're going to move,
Mhm.
new house, new smells, new scents, that kind of thing. Um, any kind of big change that disrupts the structure of the household and thus kind of the animal's boundaries. So it would be anything along that line, and then just working with the human, both intuitively and analytically, to try to come up with some solutions to alleviate the issue.
I gotcha.
Yeah, with humans, it's working more with, quite often with the inner child that has the baggage that we drag with us as we get older and affects how we live our life, how we respond or react to different situations. And I just kind of call it, it's whatever our emotional triggers are. I just call it like a flattening.
Hmm.
The memory is still there, but it's just flattened down so it doesn't disrupt us so much. It's like going from, you know, um, 3D to 1D or something like that. There just is no energy behind it. And so quite often that's dealing with, abuse,
Hmm.
um, and just ways of being that may start with, I'm having trouble with my boss. What's going on? And it's the inner dynamic of how the person is responding to the interactions with their boss.
Yeah.
They're being defensive, they're frightened, they feel like they're being bullied, intimidated, things like that. Well, what's behind that? What's underneath that? So we can just flatten that charge out and they can really step forward more into who they're meant to be.
I like the flatten the charge
Yeah.
concept. I think that's
Yeah,
the
because
first
that
time I've
really,
ever
the
heard that.
memory is not going to go away. The memory
Right.
is there, but you want it to be just a memory. You don't want to feel the emotions of it, which is the
Hmm.
charge.
Right.
And
Yeah.
what happens is when you have a trauma, it becomes a filter through which you live your life. So a similar circumstance happens. It'd be different. because we're older and we have had further experiences, but it comes in and hits us as if we were that kid again.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it just happens so fast you don't even know it.
Right.
Thus you react,
That's right.
as opposed to taking the time and space to say, what do I really need to do about this, if anything?
Mm-hmm. So your website, it's intuitionforanimals.com, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I will put that in the show notes.
Okay.
And
Thank you.
then are you offering, do you have any classes for teaching classes for people at all? What are your
Uh,
offerings on top?
I don't teach, really at this point.
Okay.
I did for a while, but if I teach, I prefer to do in person.
Oh, okay.
Easier for me to be interactive,
Yeah.
and to really follow the energy of the whole group, because, as a teacher, you do that. And it's versus looking at individuals on a Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe I'm too old. I don't know. I've never really fully adapted to the Zoom,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
unless
Gotcha.
it's very small and maybe a couple of people where there is more direct interaction.
Gotcha. Gotcha. But people can reach out to you on your
Yeah.
website. Um,
Or
they
they
can,
could call me.
or they can call you too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And your phone number will be on your website, right?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, everything
perfect.
is there. Gives you a little bit more information about what I do. So
Okay, perfect. Barbara, thank you so much
thank
for
you, Kim.
joining me today. And to hear more episodes of Medical Intuitively Speaking, you can find those on my website at kimlouisemedicalintuitive.com. Also, if you would like to schedule a free 15-minute call to see if I'm the right fit for your medical intuition needs, you can do that also on kimlouisemedicalintuitive.com. And until next time, you take care.